What's up, everyone? This is Toby, BatFlip Crazy, just coming to you this week with another YouTube video. This week, I'm going to take a look at 3 shortstop who are going in the top 100 of ADP, who I think have fairly similar profiles and are a good example of value in fantasy baseball, whether that's the shortstop position or more generally. I think the comparison highlights some important parts as you think about your roster construction and which players make sense at which point in drafts. I will start off with taking a look at Bichette. Obviously, Bichette was an exciting performer last year. He came to the majors with a ton of pedigree, and he performed in his short stint. There was a lot to like about what Bichette was able to do from a results perspective. I am a little lower, though, I think, than the industry is. Right now, his ADP is at 46, which for me seems pretty high for a guy who doesn't have a long track record. And when you look at what he was able to do last year, the 4 legs of the stool are the ability to make contact, plate discipline, quality of contact, and whether somebody is hitting the ball in the air or not. So ground ball rate in a lot of ways, launch angle. And so when we take a look at Bichette, what we see is he chases quite a few pitches outside the zone. So a high 30% O swing, which is much worse than league average. He makes contact slightly less than league average at about 76%, which makes that batting average that he had that was so high, so reliant on a very high BABIP. I think his BABIP was 364 last year, which really lifted up the batting average, and I'm not sure whether that's going to continue because the quality of contact hasn't been that great either from Bichette. 43% ground ball rate, which is right around league average, and then his hard hit rate, depending on what you look. Fangraphs, it was pretty low, around 33%, but then when you look at his StatCast data, it was actually pretty good. But what concerns me most about Bichette in his profile is that he got worse as the season progressed. Now, this could be a variety of different things, right? It could be you're talking about somebody who's new to the majors, pitchers are making adjustments, he hasn't had a chance to make adjustments back, but or it could also be that he was tired, right? A long season, he's still young, he's not used to playing that full season, especially with a good chunk of it coming in the majors. So there's a lot of reasons why he could have gotten worse, but his performance definitely suffered. When you look at his rolling average graph, pretty much across the board, everything got worse, particularly the hard hit rate. Now, that actually continues in some of his StatCast data. So his hard hit rate also dropped precipitously as the year progressed, as did his average exit velocity. And the reason why I look at those 2 metrics is because those are some of the best, most predictive metrics year to year that we have in StatCast. Barrels are too, but we don't have the beautiful rolling average graphs for barrels yet from StatCast. Now, that's not to say that Bichette is not not going to be a really good hitter, right? When you look at his ATC projection, we're looking at a 277 projected batting average, 89 runs, 22 home runs, 73 RBI, and 18 stolen bases. Now, the key for me is the stolen bases, and I think that's really going to be the key to Bichette's value. Right now, he's projected anywhere from 17 to, I believe, 27 stolen bases. And for me, the reason why I'm probably more down on him than others, I think the batting average is going to hit, which is built into the projections. But I also think the stolen bases are not going to be as high as they look. Last year, in a little more than 200 plate appearances, he stole 4 bases. But I think the key is that he also got caught 4 times. Now, when you look at his career throughout the minors and the majors, he's only got a 74% stolen base success rate. Now, again, stolen base success rate, being 4 for 8 in the majors, 50%, it's a very small sample size. That's not anything that I think we want to hang our hat on. But throughout his minor league career, he hasn't been that successful. 74% sounds pretty high, but when you look in the majors, what teams are looking for is that threshold of kind of 75% being a quote-unquote good stolen base success rate. Now, Bichette, counting the minors, hasn't even been able to get to that 74% rate total. On his career, he is 77 of 104, including the minors, which is 74% in his stolen base success rate. Now, if you anticipate that that's his stolen base success rate heavily weighted towards the minors, I anticipate that it's not going to be that good in the majors moving forward. The Blue Jays are not a team that's known for running. He's got a really potent lineup behind him, and so I don't see him. I see him being more of like a 10 to 15, maybe stolen base guy as opposed to, a 17, 18 to mid 20s stolen base guy. Again, development isn't linear, and I, as a fantasy baseball player, oftentimes am a little bit more conservative about, baking in some growth for young people. I want to pay for a guy that's been able to do something before, and I haven't seen that yet with Bichette. Next up, we're going to take a look at Marcus Semien of the Oakland A's. Now, whereas Bichette struggled with plate discipline, this has really been an area of his game where Semien has excelled recently. That and his contact rate, both of which were up this year. He also improved his hard hit rate, and he's hitting the ball. His ground ball rate on the season was elevated a little bit at 41%, but he started lowering that launch angle as the season progressed. And one of the things that I love about Semien's improvements as the year progressed was that there's a pretty clear point in time, June 7th, when he switched the weight of his bat. He got a lighter bat, and from that point forward, he had a 159 WRC plus with a 301 batting average and 26 home runs. He actually was among the league leaders in overall barrels during the second half. And so you can see kind of a concrete change that happened right there. And when you take a look at his rolling average graphs, you see everything that you want to see, right? The improvement in the hard hit rate, the ground ball rate going down. You see the contact rate improved over the course of the season, both in the zone and overall. And then when you also take a look at his rolling average graphs from a StatCast perspective, that's where it really jumps out. You can see the increase in his hard hit rate. You can see the increase in his average exit velocity. Everything was really, really good for Semien. And so, going at an ADP of 95, also batting leadoff in an Oakland A's lineup that's going to be really good. He should score a ton of runs. He should drive in a decent number of guys because that power is pretty nice. And that batting average, a lot of it depends on how much of that batting average you think improvement in the second half you think that he's going to carry over. Now, you don't want to incorporate all of it. But one of the things that projections are going to miss is they're going to miss that type of a change that might have a greater impact, right? Because they're going to wait previous years. They're going to incorporate that, and really that second half jumps out or sticks out like a sore thumb. Now, we don't want to anticipate that he's going to continue to hit 301, right? That's not the average that we're going to guess, but when you look at his ATC projection, you're talking about a 270 batting average, 99 runs, 24 home runs, 78 RBI, and 10 stolen bases for Semien. Now, just like Bo Bichette, my major concern with Semien is the stolen bases. He has not been that successful recently, in particular with his stolen bases, although he's managed to get at least 10 in every single season. But overall for his career, he's only 72% in stolen bases. He's a year older, so I think, looking at double-digit stolen bases is probably about the best you're going to get for him, in the 10 to 12 range where a lot of his projections are. There is even the possibility that might fall a little bit, but the 270 batting average seems a little bit low to me given the improvements in the underlying skill and the fact that we can actually point to that change in the weight of his bat. That's really what he points to when he thinks about his improvement. And so Semien seems like a pretty good value going where he is right now at 95. Now, the third guy that we're going to take a look at is actually my favorite of this group of three, and that is Tim Anderson of the Chicago White Sox, one pick behind Marcus Semien at an ADP of 96. Now, the thing that I love about Tim Anderson, if you've listened to me on the podcast, if you've seen my tweets, I value speed. I value batting average. Those are the two things that I'm looking for, especially early on in a draft, because as the draft progresses, those are two of the most difficult things to get without hurting yourself in one other category. Now, I'm mostly focusing on roto with my analysis as usual in 5x5 roto. Obviously, if you're doing OBP, Tim Anderson takes a big hit. If you're doing points, he's not as good either, but just something to consider overall. So with Tim Anderson, last year, obviously had the 399 BABIP. I don't think that's going to continue. But when you take a look at his ATC projection, you're looking at a 279 batting average, 85 runs, 20 home runs, 70 RBI, and 21 stolen bases. Now, out of the three guys that I'm covering today, Anderson, I think, is has the most speed. We see that in his sprint score, his speed to first base. That is the best of all three guys, and we know that he can steal 20 bases. He's done it before, and you see that in the projected for 2020. Now, the question is, where do you see that batting average falling for Tim Anderson? The key for me with Anderson is last year he also saw concrete improvements in his overall contact rate, which is critical, because that, I think, is the key to him having a better batting average than he has in the past. He took a huge jump last year. I anticipate that he's going to fall back, but I really do think he can hit 280, hit 20 home runs, steal 20 bases. When you think about the four legs of the stool for Tim Anderson, plate discipline is god-awful. I mean, he's one of the worst in the league. But one of the things that you got to remember about that is if you're not in an OBP league, one thing that can actually have a benefit for in a free swinger like Anderson is it keeps his strikeout rate lower than you would anticipate if you look at his swinging strike rate. Because he's swinging at so many pitches, in any given at bat, he's likely to swing and miss at a pitch, but he's so aggressive, he's hyper aggressive, that he might swing and miss at that, but that's the first pitch in the at bat. If it's anywhere near the zone, he's going to be swinging at it, and he's got a few hacks every at bat to make contact and not strike out. So you see the lower strikeout rate for him, which I really like a lot. When we take a look at his rolling average graphs, it's also really, really nice. And you see some of the concrete improvements that he's made. You look at his 40-game rolling average, improvements in his contact rate overall, improvements in his hard hit rate. The ground ball rate is still up and down. It's not great, but it helps boost that batting average. It's one of the reasons why of all these guys, of Bichette, of Marcus Semien, he probably has the lowest power potential. But the thing is, he does have potential if he is able to lower that ground ball rate and improve his fly ball rate. Then there's definitely some untapped power, I think, for Anderson. Potentially, when you look at some of the StatCast metrics for all three, their max exit velos are all very similar. Anderson's average exit velocity on fly balls and line drives is a little bit lower than Bichette and Marcus Semien's, but it's not that much further below them. And from a barrel rate, he's also lowest, which I think reflects both the lack of line drive and fly ball exit velocity and the highest ground ball rate of those three. But for Anderson, I love the speed. The context has improved with the White Sox a lot. And again, this is a guy who has been developing. I think last year we saw huge jumps in his development. And he's a guy, I think, who can take even a next step forward with a high batting average and getting you 2020, which would be absolutely awesome. Now, the key thing and the reason why I wanted to talk about these three guys is Bichette is just flying up draft boards right now. An ADP of 46. When I look at what my valuations give their projection, their ATC projection, for Bichette, he's a $19 player. So that makes him the 52nd ranked player overall in my player pool, but he's going in at an ADP of 46. Compare that to Tim Anderson, who is also a $19 player, my 56th ranked player overall, but has an ADP of 96. Now that is where you can win fantasy leagues, is by taking advantage of those values. Now I understand why people are so drawn to Bichette because of the pedigree, because of what he did in his rookie year, and we're assuming that there's going to be some growth there as well, but I don't want to pay for that growth. And I don't think that the stolen bases are going to be there like they're going to be there for Tim Anderson. And so I actually like Tim Anderson straight up better than I do Bichette, and especially when you take into consideration the value. But if you're looking for somebody with a little bit more of a consistent profile, somebody who can get you runs, which are also a category that you don't really think about so much, but also are hard to get later in drafts, because generally guys who get a lot of runs are batting higher up in their order, they're better hitters, and so they actually disappear pretty quickly. Marcus Semien is the type of guy, if you're looking for power, if you're looking for runs, if you're looking for consistency, he would be the guy that I would target. But for me, the guy that I like the most out of these three is actually Tim Anderson straight up. From a value perspective, I like Tim Anderson most. I like Marcus Semien second, and Bichette for me is a very far distant third. I don't want to pay the price that Bichette is going at right now. Not only does he have to meet his projection, what he's projected for right now, but he's got to exceed that in order to bring you some value, and that's something that Tim Anderson and I think Marcus Semien are pretty much locks to do so long as they stay healthy. Anyways, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do go and subscribe. I'm getting closer and closer to those 100 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and that will allow me to name the channel. I can name it BatFlip Crazy, which will be awesome. And I'm going to continue to provide this content. I do hope that you find it helpful. That's all for me today. Really fun to cover these 3 exciting players: Bichette, Marcus Semien, Tim Anderson. Thanks so much for watching. Take care and be kind to one another.